Okay, well, let me start by thanking you, sir, and the Carnegie Institute for inviting me, for giving me this opportunity to talk to this distinguished audience. It's a pleasure to be here in this great country, in its beautiful capital. And yesterday when I spoke to the Chamber of Commerce, they even were saying that they have organized the sun to come out for us. And knowing some of the resourcefulness of the Americans, I then challenge them. We are here to have a series of discussions with our counterparts in the U.S. government, the State Department, the Treasury, the Trade Representative's Office, USAID, OPIC, the business sector, and multilateral institutions. It's an opportunity for us to review the state of the global economy, how it might impact upon us, and what are the ways that we can try to bring greater prosperity and fulfill the expectations of our citizens. I think Pakistan is going through an interesting phase. It's an exciting phase, and in many ways a new Pakistan is emerging, away from the headlines, away from the usual quota of news that appear to occupy the minds of certain watchers of television. Pakistan, over the last 4.5 years, has seen dramatic changes, and these are historic changes. We've had the return of democracy, which for many Pakistanis is something that they have cherished, that they fought for, and they were happy to attain, and they are determined to preserve. We've had the restoration of the Constitution, which had been suspended, and the Constitution, which was created in a magical moment when all Pakistanis came together in 1973, has been restored to its purity. President of Pakistan, Asif Ali Zardari, voluntarily relinquished the powers that other presidents had taken from the parliament and made the parliament supreme. This parliament has functioned. It's an elected parliament over the last 4.5 years. It has passed landmark legislation, and it has tried to perform its duties to fulfill the aspirations of those who elected them. It is a country where the courts have been operating actively, where they've been holding people to account, and where they've been interpreting the Constitution, and they have been fulfilling the mandate assigned to them. It's a country where the standing committees of the Parliament, of the Senate, and the National Assembly have been working. They have been summoning public servants, holding them responsible, asking them tough questions, the full glare of public spotlight. It's a country where the media is free to critique, to comment, to scrutinize and debate issues. And they do their job very well. We have over 80 plus television channels, and they are free, entirely free. It's a country which has had a period in politics which is characterized by an absence of vindictiveness, an absence of settling of scores, and of public discourse without fear. It's a country where we've had coalition governments, and nobody has tried to dominate others. Nobody has tried to totally prevail upon others. Nobody has tried to be supreme. The political culture has evolved in a way that people have had to make adjustments. They've had to come together. They've passed unanimous resolutions. People have tried to give and take. People have tried to compromise. People have tried to move along. They've tried to listen to each other. And that's good for Pakistan. It's also a country in which over the last 4.5 years, civil society has been vibrant, it has been noisy, it has spoken out loud and clear about their preferences. And it's also a country where for the first time a democratic government's tenure will be completed, and the people again will get a chance, probably the coming 3 to 4 months, to either accept or reject whoever they wish. And the beauty of the system, as you know, since 2 centuries, is that everyone will have to submit to their will. So I think I come here with a sense of pride as a Pakistani that over the last 4.5 years, we have made strides, and above all, the rule of law, and the people of Pakistan who have shown a seductive attachment to their constitution and to be governed by a rule of law, ultimately has brought us into the global mainstream. And I think we as Pakistanis on this score can hold our head high. It's a time where institutions have been allowed to function. And when we look around us in the neighborhood, in the larger region, indeed in the whole world, this makes us, I think, if not unique, at least in many ways, gives us reason to be satisfied that we have obtained this cherished freedom. And I think it's something we have to try very hard to ensure that it provides the platform now to attain the kind of growth and to achieve the level of prosperity that we indeed have shown to be capable of. Let me turn now to the economy. First of all, we must not forget what it was like on the economic front when this government was assigned the responsibilities in 2008-9. And I'll just recap it in a couple of minutes, especially for many of our colleagues who may not know what we inherited and how much we have traveled. Of course, we have a lot of hard work to do still. In 2008-9, when this government came into its position, the growth momentum had been lost. And the growth rate had fallen in 2008-9 to 1.7%, perhaps the lowest in our recent history. Second, inflation. Inflation had begun to get into double digits by 2006-07, and by 2008-09, it peaked at 25%, the highest in our history. The twin deficits, that of current account and fiscal deficit, had become combined perhaps the highest in our history. The stock market had lost 1/3 of its value and was virtually shut down. The foreign exchange reserves had depleted to a level of $3 billion and were posing a serious threat of default. The value of the rupee had slipped from the mid-60s to the mid-80s over a few months and was really creating serious balance of payment problems. So this is the context, this is the background, this is the inheritance. And now here's a government coming, elected by the people who have aspirations, who want delivery. And on the other hand, you are staring at default, you are staring at serious crisis. A lot of politically tough decisions had to be made. The government had to go to the IMF, a standby arrangement was secured. Tough decisions like passing on the price of oil to the consumers was undertaken. Petroleum prices were deregulated, electricity prices were enhanced, and fiscal austerity was adopted, and a move towards generation of tax resources was undertaken. These are not politically popular things to do, especially for a popularly elected government at a time when aspirations of the people were at their peak. Nevertheless, a macroeconomic stability source was restored and things began to move forward. Inflation was brought down, and the crisis was averted, and it appeared like after 2 to 3 years of tough times, we would get back to the growth path of the sort that Mr. Tellis talked about. I think we were approaching around 4% growth when the great floods of 2010 struck us. Somebody advised me that everybody here knows about the great floods, so don't, elaborate on them too much. But I think it's important to understand how catastrophic they were. And not everyone may know about it. They covered an area larger than the size of Italy. They destroyed crops, they destroyed infrastructure, they shattered people's lives. They cost us $10 billion according to the estimates of the World Bank and the ADB. They wiped away 2% growth of our GDP and forced us to go back to the drawing board and move monies away from infrastructure development back to rehabilitation and recovery of our citizens who were passing their nights under the stars. So this was a setback. Nevertheless, we went back, we regrouped, and we continued to try and find ways to generate private sector momentum. We tried hard to continue on the path of reforms, and I will share with you some of the things that we managed to do. So let us look now at, as we are approaching the end of this term, 4.5 to 5 years, where we stand. First, growth rate is picking up this year after the floods and 2 consecutive years of extraordinary monsoon rains. We have reached 3.7%. If you see that the world's growth has been about 3%, and some of the high-charging economies like China and India are also slowing down now, this is, I think, a defensible growth rate. And we expect that now it will be in the 4+ range. Second, inflation. For the first time after many years of coordinated monetary policy action and fiscal policy austerity, we have the wholesale price index, the consumer price index, and the sensitive price index. All three are in the single digit. And this is allowing the central bank to bring the interest rates down and hopefully provide the incentives for investment to grow, an area in which we have not done so well. Third, if you look at our efforts to try and increase taxes, which is an area where historically we have not done well, then over the last 5 years we have more than doubled tax revenues. And in fact, over the last 2 years, when we made serious efforts to mobilize tax resources, we have done extraordinarily well. And the year that just ended, tax revenues increased by 21-22%, the highest perhaps in our history in a single year. And we added 350 billion extra rupees in taxes, and the tax to GDP ratio within a single year was enhanced by 0.5 percentage point of the GDP. Turning to fiscal austerity, it is an area we have tried hard in spite of the expenditures associated with the difficulties in the neighborhood, with the demands for defending our borders and being part of an international coalition to fight extremism. We have committed resources for our security, for payment of debts and their servicing of debts taken over the entire history of Pakistan, and for running the civilian government. So if you add up all this, the total expenditure growth has been confined merely to 6% per annum in nominal terms. And if you allow for an inflation of 11 to 12% per year, then you are talking of a real decline in total expenditures of the government by 5 to 6% every year. This in spite of the 3 items I mentioned. And if you look at civilian government alone, then last year our total expenditures were 220 billion, and this year they are 227 billion. So virtually zero growth in the running of civilian government in spite of inflation and in spite of pressures for salary increases in the government employees. So I think we have done quite well on that front, and it's a tough thing to say no to powerful people from morning to night, but that's what I have to do. And I think that's why I feel sometimes like settling here and just listening to Mr. Tillis talk about me. I'll probably never return to Pakistan. And so now if we turn, this has obviously meant it's not been easy. Because when we went for tax collection, we had to eliminate exemptions in sales taxes of powerful groups like textile and carpets and surgical equipment and sports and leather, and trying to, eliminate exemptions for fertilizer and pesticides and tractors and other kind of things. So these are very strong groups, but we went ahead and did these things. And I think the results have begun to show. And this year we would like to focus on expanding the base of income taxpayers. And that's something we can talk in the Q&A. When you go through a painful transition, obviously there are people who are disadvantaged, who are forgotten, and we decided to reach out to them. And as Mr. Tellis said, in the past, this country, our country, has experienced periods of high growth. But one of the interesting features of these periods of high growth is that they've not been characterized by everyone participating in it. And so that sense of exclusion, that sense of having been left out has been costly. In fact, it contributed towards the loss of a part of our country. So we have learned from that, and this government is committed to a regionally balanced growth. And this is manifested in at least 2 ways, 3 ways. First, historically, Pakistan has been accused correctly of not investing enough in social sector for human development. So what we did is we came together with the provinces and we decided to alter the way they are funded. And instead of the central government in Islamabad keeping most of the money, as it used to be in the past, where the formula for sharing was 50-50 of the entire divisible pool, we altered the formula. And now the provinces, states in the US terminology, get 50, instead of 50, they get 70%. So 5,000 billion rupees have been given to the provinces during the tenure of this government. And an extra 1,000 billion have been given solely because of the adjustment in this formula. So what it means is that a region like Balochistan, which we all care about, it used to get a budget of about 40 billion plus. And with the stroke of a pen, next year it received 110 billion. Now, if these monies are spent wisely, and they are, why are we doing this? Because the things that matter to people, including those in this room, drinking water, and education, and health, and maternity care, and municipal services, and law and order, the things that affect the quality of life, the people, they are in the hands of the provinces. They are within the domain of the provinces. So we are empowering them with more authority, and we are enabling them with more resources. And this is a fundamental shift which will fundamentally, I think, transform the lives of ordinary citizens. Number one. Number two, we looked at our development program, and we said that we must focus large chunks of development expenditures into the areas that have been left behind. So, new monies were allocated to Gilgit-Baltistan, to the federally administered tribal areas. I already talked about Balochistan, and a network of roads and of hospitals and colleges and other activities have been undertaken. These are the forgotten people of Pakistan. But now they're being brought into the mainstream. Somebody's reaching out to them. Somebody's saying, you have to benefit from growth. We all have to benefit. And this is, I think, again, an extraordinarily exciting period of Pakistan because of this. The third feature is about the poor, the disadvantage, which everyone talks about, but very few people have chosen to do anything about. In this government, we sat together and we said, what can we learn from international experience? From places like the World Bank and Asian Development Bank and USAID and DFID and places like Carnegie and Brookings and others. What are the global knowledge institutions telling us about how to help those who are not at the moment in a position to help themselves? So we thought we will have a social safety net program which is targeted, which is based on learning from best practices and international experience, and we undertook a poverty survey. We identified the poorest of the poor. We identified those who were really in need, and we developed a technology that did not involve intermediaries, but rather relied upon ATM cards and biometric ways of identifying people. And we allocated, instead of a combination of all sorts of subsidies, cash transfers. And so this program, named after the former Prime Minister, Shahid Benazir Bhutto, who did so much for the women of Pakistan, is targeting and is transferring cash to 3 million households in Pakistan. And one of the unique features of this program is that these are households headed by women, and the money goes straight into the hands of women. So, on the one hand, we are reaching out with social safety net that is based on international experience, modern technologies, relatively free of corruption. And on the other hand, it's a vehicle and an instrument for elevating the status of women, giving them independence of a sort, and raising their status in society, and reducing their dependence upon others. And I think this is a program that we are proud of, and we would encourage you to look into it, and if you think there are ways it can be improved, we would be happy to welcome suggestions. Now, the other point that I would like to mention is we have made special efforts. We believe that if there is something we have learned, one of the things we have learned from international experiences, you cannot operate and do well if the region as a whole is not doing well. And so what we're doing is trying to be a catalyst, trying to play our part in transforming the dynamics of our region. And an element of that is that we must reach out to the private sector of the region. So with the help of the United States, and I should acknowledge their role, we concluded a transit trade agreement with Afghanistan. This will allow Afghanistan economy to flourish, to reduce their cost of doing business, promote our trade links with them, and also open up South Asia to Central Asia. So this is, I think, a historic new treaty that was signed and is beginning to really bring the two countries together. At the same time, and perhaps even more importantly for the long term, we are putting aside ancient rivalries and reaching out to India. And we have decided to give them the MFN status. We have opened up trade with thousands of new products, and the two countries have liberalized their visa regime so that businessmen can freely interact with each other. And this, I think, is another transformational aspect of the region where we have tried to play our own part. At the same time, we have been active in trying not to rely upon external assistance, but to try and seek an opportunity for our businesses to play their part and to operate and to seek for them a level playing field. And we have managed to get from the European Union some concessions, and we also want to appreciate the US's role and those of Prime Minister Cameron and Chancellor Merkel in making that possible. And that will enhance our exports. And I'd like to share with you that 2 years back, our exports went up by 28% in a single year at a time when the world was facing a global contraction. And last year, we managed, in spite of the difficulties, to preserve that level. And our hope is that in spite of the adverse global environment, on the growth side, that our businesses, if given an opportunity, can try to preserve at least those level of exports. At the same time, we think that Pakistanis living outside Pakistan are an important asset, both in terms of contributing towards their host countries' economies and also being a source of remittance flow into Pakistan. So we went out and tried to give them incentives so that these remittances can flow through official channels and contribute towards cushioning the blows that one might get from the balance of payment side. And as a result of these efforts, these numbers have gone up from roughly $6 billion a year in 2008-9 to approaching $13+ billion a year now. And they have been a good source of display of confidence in the Pakistani economy, as well as a source of cushion on the foreign exchange account. Now, the final point on economic items that I have listed is we have tried to create an environment during this time where economic institutions are allowed to function. And as you know, the new literature on development suggests that the way to long-term growth is for institutions to be allowed to flourish. And so the central bank governor is here, Mr. Yasin Anwar. He can confirm to you that we have an independent central bank. It's a high-quality regulator, and it operates monetary policy without intervention from the finance ministry, as it used to be in the past. We have a Securities and Exchange Commission, headed by a top-notch professional, and operates it according to its own board, independently. We have the chairman of the Federal Board of Revenue, who runs the IRS of Pakistan, and he, as the revenue minister, reports to me, but we grant him all the autonomy to operate his institution without political intervention. We have a Competition Commission of Pakistan to ensure the avoidance of monopoly practices and exploitation of consumers, headed by a very dynamic young woman, and she operates without any influence or intervention. We have the national regulatory authorities for electricity and telecommunications and gas and others, and they operate free of the intervention from the ministries, even though some ministers would like to interfere in their affairs. But we resist them. So I think this is a very interesting aspect of prevalence of rule of law, of respecting each other's mandate, of allowing institutions to function. And we have made important changes in the capital markets to make them function better. And we have introduced capital gains tax to go after some of the richest people of our country. And one of the results of that is, and something that many people do not know, is that our capital market, the Karachi Stock Exchange, is the best performing capital market, best performing stock market in the entire world this year. I think I have given you a good overview of where we were, where we are, and where should we be headed in the future. Let me say that. First of all, we have to try and retain our macro stability, because any efforts to try and share prosperity can only happen if you have the platform. And as I said, our monetary policy, our fiscal policy, our private sector promotion policy, they're all geared up for this preservation of stability, bringing down, continuing to bring down inflation, because it's a regressive tax that hurts the poor the most. And second, to have a regional balance so everyone feels included in the growth. Third, continue with safety nets, but keeping them sustainable and within bounds, and focusing on sharpening the targetedness of the subsidies. We want to continue to be fiscally austere, focus on private sector promotion, focus on regional dynamics. In the energy sector, try and expand capacity, improve efficiency, and focus on alternate energies such as hydropower and coal, which has remained unexploited in our country. Of course, I do not want to leave you with the impression that everything is rosy and lose my credibility in the process. We do have challenges, of course. They are well known to many. We have not done such a great job in managing our electricity sector, and some of the inefficiencies of that sector continue to haunt us, be a drag on our growth. But we have a new, very dynamic Secretary of Water and Power, Nargis Sethi, who is here, and you can ask her all the difficult questions will be directed to her. And I think she's really shaking up the sector and going after people who have not been paying their bills, or those distribution companies in the government sector who have not done so well in the past. So I believe I'm beginning to feel more optimistic that some of these problems in the electricity sector will soon be behind us. Of course, our energy mix, input mix has changed, and there is no solution that small and open economies have in dealing with high increase in the prices of oil. So we have to endure it. But we are switching towards alternate mechanisms of producing electricity, but those results will not materialize for a few years. So in the meantime, we have to be smart in using our existing capacity and ensuring that we distribute things, electricity, properly and in pricing it correctly. We also could do a better job in managing our public sector corporations. And here, I think, is a challenge that in the coming term, we have to meet more aggressively. We made changes. We have brought distinguished people from the private sector onto the boards of these corporations, many of which we privatized anyway, so I do not want to exaggerate this problem beyond that of the electricity sector. But in some of the sectors like steel and airline and railways, we need to get our act together better. Because although their fiscal impact is not so huge, they're a continuing source of bad publicity for the government. And I think we can do better. And let me turn now to the Pakistan-US relationship and make a couple of comments on that. The Pakistan-US relationship is, in its importance for us, second to no other relationship. The US has been perhaps historically the largest participant in our economy. Out of the 800 plus corporations that operate in Pakistan, the majority are those of the US. And they have been making really good rates of return and keeping it as a secret. So I think I want to share it with you. They have been thriving, and I'm happy for them. I'd like more of their brothers and sisters to join them. Second, as far as our exports and imports are concerned, the US is our single largest partner. The trade relationship accounts for something like $5 billion plus a year. And it's a two-way relationship. We export garments and textiles and surgical equipments and stuff like that, and the US sends us machinery and Boeings and stuff like that, General Electric. And so it's a relationship we need to build on. And at the government level, we have a strong relationship on the political side, military side, and on the economic side. We feel that the economic side potential has only just now begun to be realized. And we need to work really hard. We've been meeting people at OPIC and at the Trade Representative's Office and at the State Department Treasury, and above all, most importantly, with private sector businesses. Because governments can go only so far, and I think they are going and trying to go as far as they can to provide incentives, and we appreciate the support we get from the US government in terms of promoting projects in the energy sector, rehabilitation of our power plants, building of infrastructure in the areas affected by the security situation, and possible collaboration in flagship projects like the Diamond Pasha Dam. So we do appreciate that. At the same time, what we want to engage and what we want the governments to do is to provide incentives for their businesses so that the relationship can deepen. And it's this area of providing financing for export, for providing insurance for companies to go in, for providing seed capital, for providing capital to businesses, so that the Americans can benefit from the relationship in a commercial way, and at the same time contribute towards a more lasting basis for permanent relationships that are not transitory, but are based on long-term solid foundations. So let me end now by again thanking you. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to Q's and A's. I have people who will respond to all the tough questions. I will take the easy ones. Thank you.